Hey guys, what's up? Itchla coming back to ya with another episode of Car Rides of Walkswithsla. And yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about how I don't think the microphone's gonna be here today. I didn't check it, but I have my doubts. I think it will be here tomorrow, which means it will arrive while I'm at work, and there will be yet an additional 3 episodes of walkswithsla on the bad microphone. And no, I have not gone through the effort to just try to temporarily have the other use my good mic for this series. I don't know why, for whatever reason. I just like using this a lot more. So it is what it is. I'm still very interested in the iPhone Air. I just am. I don't know. It's something I feel like I should get. I would enjoy it a lot. And I wish that was where the direction more people were in with tech. The only conundrum now is that I almost wish I could support it directly, rather than getting it pre-owned, getting it brand new, but it's difficult for me to make that choice because I really want to try to push the sales up for it because it's struggling so hard. And it's a shame, it's really a shame because I think, again, phones have gotten so much heavier and maximalist and they don't need to. There's no reason for them to be that way. Again, because humans do not use technology properly. They need all this extra battery life and stuff for things that isn't even necessary at all. It's a shame. It's a shame. But someday, phones will eventually be getting thinner. It's just we haven't seen that occur yet. For the time being, they're still going to be probably getting thicker for the time being. We're quite a ways out, but someday in the far future, they will end up getting thinner, because it's just a progress thing. It's just that we really didn't think it was going to be like this. I think we all thought phones would be thinner by now, we wouldn't still be dealing with thicker and thicker phones, but the thinnest they got was around the iPhone 6 era, and then ever since then they really just started buffering and bulking them up. So what can you do? I'm not sure. It's a shame, but you can't change humans, and humans they're hard to make do the right thing. It's really difficult to make a human have the right judgment, and then in my case, my judgment is so different, even though I think it's more accurate, but it's so different, it's so much of an outlier. It makes it so difficult to even converse or communicate with humans. Up until this moment, I had actually completely forgotten what I wanted to talk about or what I was going to talk about, but it just came back to me just now. And while I have been still thinking about the memory thing and how you compare people with different degrees of memory and how, again, just ravenous humans are with how quickly, I know I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but it's like, oh, I want this, get it, and eventually just forget about it, never care about it, don't think about it anymore. And it's this cycle with life and how humans are inherently an ungrateful species, and that it takes a great degree of psychological effort in order to overcome that. Lots of psychological programming and effort just to even feel gratitude. And it's a shame because it it implies that we're an evil species, a destructive evil species at heart. Our heart is not pure. And I think that's kind of the origin of it, the forgetfulness of things. And then, of course, I had to get that out, and then I forgot about the thing I was actually going to talk about. Oh well. Happens a lot. I always juggle so many things in my head, and I have to get it out all at once again. Even now I'm frustrated because I'm operating through such a outdated, inefficient vessel. Like, it's great that we have the microphone and the communication through that. I know, like, I should be happy that I'm alive for this time period, but seriously, I have so many thoughts juggling in my head. I need to get a Neuralink in here stat. You know what I mean? To just fix it up and have, like, clearer thoughts getting on there. I'm serious, man. Like, because I do these shows and it's like I'm juggling so many things, and the mouth is not really able to, it's still slow. You know what I mean? Like, so I think we've talked about this a lot before as well. And it's this idea that most people, it's difficult for them to find the words to say things properly. And I think it's a result of they just don't consume long form content enough. Like, when, all growing up, really, I would watch long videos of long talking. And this generation grows up on TikTok, which results in lots of lost time, lots of little clips that they just forget about. And so it doesn't really cultivate any larger thing, if that makes any sense. It's like, and it's based on what you can tell how a person is based on what they watch, I guess, and in my case, being able to sustain and weave a long form or a longer form conversation for longer, it shows what I've engaged with growing up, which is, it is the benefit of being born when I was, even though, now I kind of wish I was a little bit younger, because, again, it's just so frustrating having to work with these insufficient mediums, and how, once the Neuralink gets made, I'll be able to record. Because imagine too, with the mind and thoughts, and how it could be, you can get the tone out of a thought and then actually be able to reconstruct it with much better quality than even the best microphones can pick up, because it's just a dead clear signal. Whereas here, there's air in between my mouth and the microphone. There's all this noise going on because we're outside. I mean, if I just had that direct link, that would be amazing. So it's still a little bit frustrating, but I guess this stuff, I'm figuring it out just in the nick of time, because I really have no idea what I would be doing if it wasn't for this right now. I'd probably still be moping around, because this, even when I don't have anything to say, I guess it's just like some kind of an outlet. It's just something for me to do, because that's really all life is at this point. We have so much time, and we're just looking for things to do, and most people just end up wasting it or blowing it, because they just go on the screen and do a bunch of mindless stuff they're not going to remember, or spend money on things that are probably meaningless, And I get that I spend a lot of money, but it's on tech, which I think has more meaning than toys. But you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how we're dealing with even food, even food. So I try to make sure that's meaningful. But at least what I'm saying is I have a hobby it's more meaningful than a lot of people. And I'm trying to make sure I'm doing better. But hey, at the end of the day, I still never really know if I'm going to be adequate or not. You know, I have a feeling that I was just asking GPT about population control, and I barely even touched on the research, but it briefly mentioned how a lot of estimates say humanity would be most ideal if maintained at about a population of 1 to 2 billion. And so, yeah, I don't know. That sounds about right to me, but you know, it's obviously a problem. It's kind of morally iffy, but it sort of makes sense, I guess. Because if you think about it, the exponential growth of humans led to a lot of problems, right? Like it's kind of, and I guess this is a complicated and morally questionable subject. And note, I still forgot what I was originally going to talk about. Hopefully I remember, but I might not. And it's the exponential growth of population actually led to a lot of evil and selfishness and major miscalculation of how things were going to continue. So we've talked about it a lot, how the only reason, in addition to a fairer wealth distribution and better wage laws and, yeah, just less blatant wealth inequality. In addition to that, you had such an exponential influx of people being born. So if you have so many more young people than old people, that is huge. That is great. That's like a great thing. It really helps to boost a lot of funding for a lot of these programs, such as Social Security, Medicare, and these other things. So in addition to the programs having fair, proportionate funding and probably more wealth, again, I haven't calculated this stuff, but it's a very accurate assumption that the programs used to function better than they do now. In addition to those services, you also had way less people even using them, and a lot of people thought that this is how things were always going to be because they weren't really thinking about things systemically. They just, okay, it worked, so it's always going to work or something. And a lot of people didn't think that you were going to have corporations or special interests coming in to erode these essential fabrics in our government, and that's what ended up happening. And then also, I guess people didn't know, or for some reason, again, it's beyond me why they weren't able to calculate that you would have had to have a continuous exponential population growth in order to have these programs and economy have the same continued growth. But nobody did that, and so having a kid or not became a judgment-free choice. You know, it's something that you either choose to or choose to not do. And that was really a huge mistake in judgment, culturally speaking. Because like I said, then you had people where, oh, instead of having a kid, I'll get a BMW. And then that led to the burst of prosperity we saw, because there was a selfish grab from all the people from the generation with the largest population boom, where they just grabbed, took advantage of, and got the long end of the stick from a lot of these social government programs. They enjoyed good wage laws, and then by the time they got to the managerial class, then they let them erode, and so they grabbed even more of the benefit, and then they got to live these amazing lives. And I hope that there's some justice in the afterlife, at least. And that's what I've been saying recently. I hope that a lot of these people have some kind of reckoning or something, you know, because it's just not fair that such a small percentage of humans got those great lives and then they were directly responsible for the downfall that we see now. Even if they were allegedly ignorant, I still think there's got to be some kind of punishment. And I mean, they don't need to be in hell for some like eternity. I mean, it doesn't need to be that bad, but there's got to be some kind of clear punishment and rebuke, you know, just proportionate to how much they ruined things for the younger people. And so that's kind of my theory, is that actually reproduction, it causes moral issues because it causes that blindness, and it caused that blindness directly. And if it wasn't for that population influx, then that evil wouldn't have happened. Like if we just always had maintained a level population, it would have been easier to calculate things properly. You know, so that's kind of why it's interesting, but the population boom almost was immoral without people even realizing it, because again, obviously this was just humans acting of their own accord. It was not any type of calculation or thinking about doing it for the benefit of the human race or anything like that. It was just a bunch of people selfishly wanting to have kids for their own selfish interests. And so that population influx in the 1900s, it actually it created a lot of evil, and without people even knowingly realizing it. And I think that's a super important thing, which is why there could be sort of an ideal populated rate to achieve, and that might be like 2.1 per family or something like that. It's probably not 1, because China did that and then they had to roll that back. It's probably not like a 1-child rule. It's probably something like a 2-child rule, or like a 2 to 3-child rule or something like that. If I had to imagine, although again, hypothetically, it would be just as many kids as possible. But the problem with that, like I said, is the sustained growth, which we obviously did reproduce too much and it wasn't able to be sustained, which is the mathematical issue with that. Like, you could technically, and you would want people to have as many kids as possible, but only if it's sustainable. If it's not sustainable, then we shouldn't have had as many kids as we did. Like, there should have been more control to the population boom. And I'm going to put this transcript into GPT, and I really have a feeling I'm onto something with this, that like, if they could have flattened the boom in the 1900s, that things would be so much better now. So I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. And the reason why it's complicated morally is because population control either requires the direct destruction of human life, or it requires the dissuasion. I can't even think of the right word. Sorry, the dissuasion against having kids, which is, it's both a little bit iffy. Like, if somebody can and wants to have children, it's kind of weird to create like a system to prevent that. But I guess you have to think about what's morally correct in the long term. And I'm absolutely assuming this is what the elites are thinking, because they've concocted an economic system. I mean, or they just might not be moral. I guess I sort of give the benefit of the doubt with that, but I assume there are moral justifications for what the elites do. I really want to assume that. Like, I guess I don't just want to think that they're just evil, but I guess it's true that they could just have no idea what they're doing either. But I'd hope, and I'd have to imagine, that the billionaires and Peter Thiel, they have some kind of a coherent ideology, and again, just see it as justification. Like, there's some kind of, even though in the moment it seems fairly immoral or unethical, they have some kind of vision they're trying to concoct, and I'm just trying to piece that together. I'm not saying whether I agree with it or not. I'm just trying to piece it together. And that's my main piece, is I know for a fact that the world would be a much better place if they just somehow restricted population growth in the 1900s and like had like a 2 or 3 child rule. But instead, this doesn't seem to be how humans think. They don't think ahead. I mean, they don't populate that way either. There's no planning. There's no thinking ahead. It's just being animals, you know. And I think that is the biggest issue, is that there's not much planning or systematic, like, okay, well, this is going to have this effect, and it's evil. It's evil, and it's lower level in our ability to do things. It's stupid. It's unwise, you know, and that's why people really need to get a grip, basically. That's what needs to happen. But it's not, you know. I continue to cry out. I post these videos and nobody seems to really notice. The politicians are not really talking about any of these kind of issues, and honestly not really being very productive. So you need people like me in Washington, you know, just people who are willing to listen and willing to care. You know, it's kind of insane how little people even can square it, but I assume it's just a limitation in the human psyche. I don't really know how else to square it or justify it or reason it or make sense of it, because it just doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm hoping to get somewhere with this, and I'm very excited. I am probably going to import. I've been lazy. I should be doing like all my transcripts into GPT to see what it double checks or validates or things like that. I haven't been doing that, but this one I thought was really interesting, and I think the only problem is I forgot what I originally wanted to talk about, and I hope that it comes back to me, but at the moment it's not. And then, you know, the day's going to go on, so I'm kind of wary of if that will actually happen. Like, I'm not sure if the thing's going to come back to me or not. It's a shame, but yeah, I don't know. It's probably just a lost cause, but hopefully we'll always find new things to talk about anyway. But anyways, it's binge schla, and now it's time to buy schla. So, see ya schla.